Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into Stephen Bartlett's book, Diario de un CEO, 33 Layers para los negocios y la vida. We've got the source material here, notes and excerpts. And our mission, well, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We want to sift through it all, pull out the really vital nuggets, the key insights.
Right.
And kind of build a framework for thinking about success. Holistically.
Yeah.
Not just business, but life too.
Exactly. And what's really interesting looking at the sources is how this book isn't just like academic theory.
No.
It comes straight from Bartlett's own pretty intense journey as a young entrepreneur.
Right, his own experience.
And maybe even more importantly, it's distilled from all those deep conversations he's had on his podcast.
That's a huge source, yeah.
So it's presented as these principles, drawn from real life, real experience, designed to help anyone, really, to innovate, improve, lead effectively.
In all areas.
Yes, that's the point. Every aspect. It merges the professional and the personal.
Okay, let's unpack that. The sources talk about these 33 laws, or fundamental principles, illustrated with his stories, insights from interviews. What's the core aim? What's he hoping people take away beyond just, say, business tips?
Well, the big goal, reading through the material, seems to be giving you this genuinely holistic framework.
Okay.
It's maybe less about specific tactics
Right.
and much more about cultivating a certain mindset.
A mindset.
Yeah. The aim is to help you develop like a robust growth mindset, boost your self-awareness, strengthen leadership skills.
Oh, resilience.
Build resilience, definitely, and ultimately improve performance. But not just at work.
Oh, okay.
Relationships, health, personal growth too.
Yeah.
It really emphasizes that long-term sustainable success.
Yeah.
It's deeply tied to who you are.
Not just what you do.
Exactly, not just what you do.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about, crunching the numbers or nailing a presentation.
Yeah.
So let's dive into some of these key principles then, the ones that really stand out from the sources. One that seems to really challenge traditional thinking is around vulnerability.
Oh, yeah. This is where the book offers a really powerful counterpoint. To that old image of the leader who knows everything never shows weakness.
The impenetrable leader, yeah.
Totally. What's fascinating is how Bartlett argues that showing vulnerability isn't weakness. It's not something to hide.
It's a strength.
It's presented as a fundamental source of authentic power and connection.
Connection, interesting. How so?
Well, the sources describe how being open about challenges, doubts, even failures can build immense trust and loyalty.
Within a team, you mean? Or with customers?
Both, really. Within a team with an audience, it frees you from that exhausting pressure, that facade of needing to be perfect or know everything.
Right, that must be draining.
Totally. And that allows for more genuine relationships and faster learning, actually.
Does he give examples?
Yeah, the sources mention him being candid with his own team during uncertain times at his company.
And what happened? Panic?
Surprisingly, no. Apparently, it didn't breed panic. It fostered more like a shared sense of purpose, a determination to get through it together.
Wow. So it's not just feeling vulnerable, it's about using that authenticity, strategically almost, to build trust.
It's a good way to put it. It genuinely flips the script on conventional leadership advice.
Yeah, it really does. And, well, if vulnerability involves being open about struggles, that connects pretty naturally to another principle the sources highlight: failure, our relationship with it.
Right. This raises that big question. How do we frame setbacks? How do we think about them?
Because most people see it as, well, failure, the end, shameful even.
Exactly. But here, failure is consistently presented throughout the sources as invaluable, even necessary, part of the journey.
Not just a platitude like fail forward.
It seems deeper than that. The book apparently details how every mistake, every single one, holds crucial lessons if you look for them.
So the key is how you react.
Exactly. It lies entirely in your response. The sources emphasize this. Can you actually analyze what went wrong quickly? Can you adapt, pivot based on what you learned? It's not just about bouncing back.
It's about using it.
Actively using failure as fuel for growth, for innovation. It's like the foundation for building that personal resilience you need for the long haul.
Okay, so using failure requires analysis, learning. Which implies you need to be constantly taking in new information, right?
Yes.
Which brings us neatly to this idea of incessant curiosity.
Absolutely. And in a world that's just changing so fast,
Yeah.
accelerating like crazy.
It feels like it, yeah.
The capacity for that insatiable curiosity, and maybe even more critical, the willingness to unlearn old ideas.
Unlearned. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, unlearn outdated stuff and relearn new approaches. It's presented as absolutely vital. Bartlett underscores this, drawing from his interviews with, top thinkers and leaders.
So this thirst for knowledge,
Yeah.
it's not just a nice to have.
No, the sources frame it as the core engine. What drives personal adaptation, innovation in organizations, and just staying relevant long term.
If you stop asking why or what if.
You stagnate. Simple as that.
And you can't really sustain that level of curiosity or bounce back from failures with resilience if you're, running on empty, can you?
No way.
The sources also put a huge emphasis on prioritizing mental health.
Yeah.
Just general well-being.
Yeah, this is clearly a deeply personal theme for Bartlett, and it's woven all through the work based on the sources. Foundational, really.
And what's the core argument there?
What's fascinating is the clear, unambiguous link he draws between your personal well-being, physical health, mental state, emotional balance, getting enough rest.
The basic.
The absolute basics, yeah. And sustained high-level professional performance.
So that whole idea of sacrificing your health for success?
He dismantles it. The book basically says that idea is a myth, especially long-term. It stresses that the most effective leaders, the most successful people in any field, are the ones who actively prioritize their own foundation.
Taking care of themselves first.
Yes. Peak performance doesn't come from grinding yourself into dust. It comes from a place of fundamental personal strength and, self-care.
That focus on personal strength, it feels like a really necessary counterpoint to that always-on hustle culture we see celebrated so often.
Definitely.
But okay, success in business isn't purely individual, is it? It's inherently about building things with other people, for other people.
True.
How does the book extend these principles to, building strong organizations, teams?
So the source material makes it really clear that for Bartlett, the actual soul of a successful business isn't just its product or service.
It's the people.
Fundamentally, it's the culture. He apparently details how having a clear, compelling vision, genuinely shared values that people actually live by day to day.
Not just posters on the wall.
Exactly. And a team that feels empowered, trusted, aligned. Those are the true drivers of durable, long-lasting success. The book delves into, the nuances of team dynamics, empathetic leadership, and just how critical it is to rally people around an inspiring mission, something bigger than just profit.
Does he talk about making tough calls based on that?
Yeah, the sources mention examples of times they had to make hard decisions based on core values, even when it wasn't easy financially or strategically, perhaps.
And that strengthened the culture.
That's the argument. It reinforced what they stood for.
That makes sense. A strong culture like that probably gives people the confidence, the foundation to then challenge the norm, right? To drive innovation.
Absolutely. That links directly to another point. The author actively encourages you, the reader, to question things.
Question what?
Established practices, conventional wisdom, industry norms. Just because something's always been done a certain way.
Doesn't mean it's right.
Exactly. Genuine disruption. Real impactful innovation. According to the sources, it almost always comes from having the audacity to challenge the status quo.
It's not just about being contrary for the sake of it.
No. It's about looking for those overlooked opportunities, being willing to step outside comfortable boundaries to create something genuinely new, something valuable.
And in a world where the status quo itself is constantly shifting under our feet anyway,
right.
Staying ahead means you have to be willing to constantly change yourself and your business.
This brings up a really important point the sources circle back to again and again.
Which is?
In this rapidly changing environment, the ability and the willingness to actively reinvent yourself and your business, it's not just a competitive edge anymore.
It's essential.
The book presents it as an existential necessity for survival, for growth.
Wow. So what does that involve?
It means being continuously open to new ideas, being agile, adapting quickly when new trends emerge, and this is often the hard part, being willing to let go of what worked yesterday, even if it was successful then.
If it's not relevant for tomorrow.
Precisely. It has to be an ongoing process, not just a one-off reorg or something.
Yeah.
Constant reinvention.
Okay, so bringing all these different threads together then. We've talked about vulnerability, failure, curiosity, well-being, culture, challenging norms, reinvention. What does it all add up to? What's the big picture takeaway from this deep dive into the sources?
Well, Diario de un CEO, as the sources describe it, it isn't really offering like rigid laws set in stone, you must do X.
It's not a strict rule book.
No. Instead, these principles, these laws, they're framed more as invitations. Invitations for some deep self-reflection and then conscious, deliberate action.
Okay.
The real value, it seems, lies in this integrated, holistic approach.
Okay.
It keeps reinforcing the idea that sustainable success both professionally and personally. It isn't solely about mastering strategy or piling up technical skills.
Right. It's fundamentally rooted much deeper than that. It's about cultivating the right mindset, developing profound self-awareness, embracing that continuous learning and adaptation we talked about, and building genuine connections. We've explored how vulnerability can actually be a strength, how failure serves as this, well, potent teacher.
A really important one.
The indispensable role of curiosity, that non-negotiable priority of well-being.
Can't skip that.
The power of intentionally building strong cultures, the courage needed to challenge those ingrained norms, and, that absolute imperative of constant reinvention.
And this body of wisdom presented in the book, it feels incredibly practical. It's designed really as a roadmap for you, the listener.
To help you what?
To help you develop that robust growth mindset, sharpen your self-awareness, strengthen your leadership capacity, foster resilience when things get tough.
Fuel innovation.
Fuel innovation, exactly, and integrate personal well-being as a core component, not just an afterthought, in your pursuit of whatever success means to you.
Okay, so if cultivating authenticity, that vulnerability piece, and seeing failure as a lesson, if those are presented as such powerful keys to growth, here's something maybe for you to consider as we wrap up this deep dive. What is one deeply ingrained assumption you hold about what success truly requires or what leadership really looks like that you might be ready to challenge or perhaps rethink based on these principles?